charge taxes on it. We got to pay taxes on it, but yet you can't use the banking system. So, yeah.
Right. I think most people, their licenses are pretty restrictive, so they're not going to fudge on the amount of volume, the inventory, and the amount of sales, because that's a criminal act if you underreport your sales.
Let's talk about the power of hemp, from the farm field to finished goods. Learn all about it at the 2022 Midwest iHemp Expo, May 20th through 21st at the Lansing Center. Visit MidwestIHempExpo.com. See you there. All right, we are live on the iHemp Hour. Welcome to the iHemp Hour. My name is Dave Craybill. I'm with iHemp Michigan. iHemp Michigan's mission is to educate, inform, and promote the research, development, and cultivation of industrial hemp. We're joined today with my partner in crime, Blaine Bechtold. He's here in the iHemp studio.
We're backwards.
Yeah, we're backwards, yeah. And, of course, Mike Brennan from the dark side. We got everything about...
We like it on the dark side, you know?
Yeah. And our guest, Mike, why don't you introduce our guest? You know Bob probably better than all of us.
Yeah, Bob Moore Financing. He's from Oklahoma. I met him a couple of years ago through a mutual friend. What really intrigued me was his background in hemp financing. And of course, he's a third generation banker. So great banking credentials. He's very informed when it comes to that area. He knows what flies generally. I mean, how can he get you a loan for buildings, for land, for equipment, factoring, credit cards? He's got it all together on that. And he's working, I have to, does a disclaimer, he is working with me. So I'm trying to get him noticed here in Michigan because I think he provides a really good service that not only the hemp farmers would be interested in, but folks in the cannabis space as well. I mean, we're only divided by the THC level, right? But it's pretty much the same plant. And so he understands all the issues associated with that. Did I get that correct, Bob? I don't want to speak out of term there.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. And so let me just start. We were just chatting before we started, and one of the issues that's come up repeatedly is the Safe Banking Act. It seems to get passed every year by the House, but goes nowhere in the Senate. But if it eventually does get approved and signed into law, what changes would that make in the industry on both sides of the THC spectrum?
Yeah, I'll back up a little bit. But a lot of people said, "Oh, when Biden gets in there, Biden wins. We'll get this." It's like, no, actually, if Trump would have stayed in office, we would have already had it on the deal. It was greatly moving forward, and Mitch McConnell, the senator from Kentucky, was pushing it, and so would have already passed. It's not going to pass in the Senate because the House screws it up. The people we got in power at the moment can't, like they say, they could screw up a 2-card funeral procession. But the scars, to answer your question, the banks, they think their monthly fee is warranted because they have a hassle of trying to stay in compliance. A lot of people still don't have bank accounts and probably won't. They've lived this long without going to the bank. They can live a little longer. I wish they'd pass it, and you and I had visited before, and hopefully somebody that listens to this, we can get to the right legal group, because I don't think it would take long. We could get 5 state attorney generals to give opinions that they recognize hemp cannabis the same way the USDA does in the Farm Bill. And then from there, we go to a federal judge. That federal judge says we're going to recognize the USDA definition, not the drug enforcement definition. But they'll basically put a hold on the drug enforcement people until Congress clarifies it. And then when it does that, then people won't be scared of getting in trouble, because you don't need federal government knocking on your door. So we're only a couple of signatures away from doing it, but I don't think Congress is going to do it. I think some judge will have to do it. We'll have to hit. I think that's the way.
The lawsuit start on this thing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And if you did that, I think because the states want it, the state likes it, the states are making money, they're creating jobs on things. So that's kind of where I'm at on the thing. So,
So, Bob, why do you think that? I mean, we already have a definition for industrial hemp. I mean, it's been passed, it's in the law. And of course, then anything above that is considered marijuana. Why do you think we're still having such resistance in the banking industry for the industrial hemp? What
well,
do you think?
the drug people, the drug enforcement folks really are the ones that are causing the trouble.
Hmm.
And really in some countries, as you well know, they're going the 1% instead of the 0.3. And that's going to clarify it. So, it's like, what's the difference?
Yeah.
Well, the Federal Reserve has issued letters to the banking industry saying it's safe to bank hemp, but it doesn't seem to have an impact at all.
No, because the people that come and audit you are not the folks. They don't recognize it.
Mm-hmm.
The federal government, they do whatever they want to do whenever they want to do it. So the banks are still scared, and lenders just won't touch it. So the minute I say hemp cannabis, they'll say, "Wait a minute, my parent company is the bank, and they won't touch it. I have to do a private lender on the site." So they'll have to say, "Oh, you have to do this way or that way," or we've gotten around it, but it's
Well, let me give you an
twice as
example.
hard.
My company, we don't even touch the plant. We're a news service. And so we finally got an account set up at Comerica Bank, and it's 420 Media Holding Group. And we had to jump through a whole bunch of hoops. We had to have a vice president at the bank approve it. Took about a month. And we kept saying to them, we're just a news service, and they just gave us a hard time. And God help those companies that have hemp or cannabis in their name. I mean, that almost blackballs them. And I guess my understanding, and correct me again if I'm wrong, is these big banks are federally insured, and they're afraid they're going to lose that status if they go ahead and give accounts to hemp and cannabis companies. At least that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Right?
You got a better chance to go to a credit union. You got a better chance to go to a state licensed bank instead of a federal licensed bank. So that's the two places that you try to get to. Credit unions are easier to work with, or state licensed banks. So you kind of have to hunt to find them because usually they're smaller and they're in the rural areas.
Yeah, we have a
Yeah,
handful
my
of
local-
Michigan. I'm go ahead, Blaine.
I say my local credit union. I was able finally to establish an account with them. Of course, I've been with them for a number of years too, and there's not hemp in my name, down on the farm. But I want to get some financing, to get some equipment, and do some other research projects, and so they were able to finally work with me. But it took a couple of years.
Yeah.
Keeping going, asking them, and doing it. And finally, see how they do it. So yeah.
So the easiest thing to get financed is stuff that have serial numbers. If you got a serial number, I can usually get it financed. So if you're buying stuff new or used, doesn't matter how old it is, type deal, or really how the dollar amount. If it's got serial number, the thing that's hard to get financed is capital expenditures. Things that like payroll. Are past
So
due.
Bob, are you working in different? Let's talk a little bit about your services. So, are you working in multi-states? Are you working with?
Oh yeah. I work nationwide and in Canada. Recently, I got the client approved for $18 million in Canada. Don't have it closed yet. They couldn't answer all our questions. We came back with some questions, but we got a term sheet of approval for $18 million for a company that processes hemp in Canada.
Now, was that for land, for buildings, for equipment, or all of the above?
That's just for equipment and operations, which is kind of unusual because, but most of it was equipment. But there wasn't any real estate on that.
Oh, okay.
Usually on the real estate, you try to separate the real estate and equipment because one's got a 5-year term or 10 years at the most. And of course, if you got real estate, you can go to 30. I've actually done a few at 40 years with it, if you go through the USDA programs. you can actually get low interest up 30, 40 years locked in. But the surprisingly, when I first started, the thing I got financed most of was money safes. People were just, they had money and they couldn't take it to the bank. And so they ended up getting prepaid cards. And so that's how I ended up doing so much credit card business. It's like, gee, you got a whole stack of prepaid cards. It's $1,000 on each card. You know, that's really a bad way to hide money or save money, whichever way. Because they're reporting it because that's how I got them approved. Is they didn't have bank accounts, but they did have state reports that show how much volume they had and how much sales tax they paid. So I used the state reports to get them approved.
Oh, wow. Interesting. We have a question from Jason Newman. Thanks, Jason. Is there increased scrutinization on companies who utilize cryptocurrency payments?
It's frowned on, but I think it's going to happen. And matter of fact, I had checked about 6 months ago when one I handled, and I checked with the lender that was actually in Nevada, and they said, yeah, we're wiring up for it to we think it's going to happen big time. And so it's frowned upon, but it's going to happen. Sounds like it's probably a bad thing for the federal government, but it's a good thing for people if it's if federal government too hard to work with, people found a way to get around it. That's true Americanism, to find a better way.
Yeah, until we become like China. I hear China's banning all other cryptocurrencies. They came up with their own and they're giving it away to get everybody hooked on it. Just trying to capture the market.
Yeah. Oh, I think a lot of people's going to get, we're about this far away from people saying we don't want nothing to do with China. I think a lot of folks we'll pay a little bit more and let's make it here.
Yeah.
Well, I noticed that recently there's been some stories out in state of Washington of some dispensaries out there, because again, they're handling cash, right? They have no way to put in the banking system yet, which is ridiculous, but they don't. And so now it's created a situation where there's been some people that have been shot and killed over this whole thing. A security guard, employee, and two separate places, I believe. But so we need to make this a safe banking. I mean, it's ridiculous that they're going to charge taxes on it. We got to pay taxes on it, but yet you can't use the banking system. So,
yeah. Right. I think most people, their licenses are pretty restrictive, so they're not going to fudge on the amount of volume, the inventory, and the amount of sales, because that's a criminal act if you underreport your sales.
Right.
And
so we want it one way, but we're not going to give it to you the other way. That's unfortunately
right.
That's what's going on right now. Yeah.
But to back to answer your question, I do equipment financing, I do accounts receivable financing, and then I work on large commercial financing loans, which may or may not include real estate. Most of them include some type of real estate.
What kind of percentage down on equipment?
On equipment, well, it kind of depends on people's net worth and their credit score. Okay. I've got a couple of lenders that do basically unsecured up to $300,000 unsecured.
David?
They'll just do it strictly off the credit score.
I know David was looking at a mobile decorticator, so I was just mentioning that to him. So
yeah, you can go to my webpage, go on there, and it'll if you got credit score, it will pop up there high enough, they'll approve you for $300,000 unsecured. And so, but to answer your questions, you tell people 5%, but actually it's less than that on equipment. If you've got a balance sheet that puts together and financials and a credit score over 600, it's almost back to normal of two payments. You do a 5-year monthly payment deal, and you pay first 2 payments up front, which is pretty cheap.
Mhm.
depending on the dollar amount, but that's still way lower. That's 1 or 2% actually.
Bob, how can people find you if they want to find out more about your services? So you mentioned a website you have?
Oh, bobmorefinancing.com.
Well, that's
Easy to
pretty.
remember. Getting back to your example of the $300,000 for the equipment, I mean, you were seeing a 600 credit score. What sort of financials are they looking for in terms of, is there like a net worth or what exactly?
They'll just score it. It depends on what shop. They'll do your credit report, and they'll see what pops up. If something bad pops up, it's pretty easy to know on those things.
And I know you were working on a deal recently, and I know the inside information. I won't disclose it, but you were talking to a Canadian cryptocurrency lender about financing a big land deal you were working on for about 18 million. And I know that didn't quite work out, but that's an example of working A with the cryptocurrency side and B working with financing for land and building, right?
Right. Yes. And matter of fact, it was it's not totally out of a dead deal yet, but they couldn't answer some of our questions. We're the ones that put together the things that said we want you, we want to protect our customer, and this is what we really want. And so that's really the gist of it on those things.
Bob, you also do financing for operating?
The operation capital expenditures are the hard thing. If you do, that's why I say if you got serial number, it works. If you're trying to do payroll, it's really, really hard to cover payroll.
But you could do factoring though, right?
Do factoring. If you're sending invoices, accounts receivable financing, if you're sending invoices to other businesses and then waiting for a check in the mail, we can greatly improve your cash flow.
Yeah, I know on the cannabis side of the business right now, there's a lot of dispensaries, provisioning centers that are struggling to get people to pay because everyone's passing their cash flow problems around to everybody else, right? And so for those that would kind of need the immediate help to make payroll, things like that, you might be able to help them, right?
Help improve their cash flow.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I was on a Zoom meeting this morning with people from Europe, from the UK, and some of it was the cryptocurrency folks was on there also, but there was six different groups, and I was one of them. And to do the credit card, to do a combination of a prepaid card with a credit card, and do a private label pay card. That if we do that, that will help. And I've got a company that I've done some financing for. They actually write the software program for the state government. So there's a case where we can expand what you've had people on there that said seed to sale. That's the term it's an old term now, the seed to sell folks. Well, it had some shortcomings in it, but the private label pay card is probably the thing that you'll see in the next 60 days pop up on some states.
How's that work? I don't understand that.
Well, you don't have to have a bank account. That's the first thing. Is you don't need a bank account. The merchant doesn't have to have a bank account. It's like the cashless ATMs.
So a customer comes in and puts their cash in an ATM machine, and they get a debit card, and then they use that debit card
right
at the dispensary or whatever.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
And the good thing about it is it collects the sales tax for the state, so that now the state gets their money faster. So the state likes it.
Oh, so it splits off that money right away.
Yes.
So they just put on that prepaid card, is it the point where they use the prepaid card, or
Yes,
the point where
you
they
use
fund the prepaid card?
you use the prepaid card at the counter to pay for your product.
But you can't use a regular credit card. It has to be one of these prepaid
Right.
cards.
Because the problem is, if you have a Visa MasterCard, they will not settle. And I've worked with several banks, and we've gotten up to third base 3 different times, and their legal department just blows the whistle on us because they will not come off that. They want the merchant to have a bank account, and it's like, the merchant doesn't have a bank account and not going to get one. The banks, at that time, the banks were charging $1,000 a month service charge. And now they've come down to about $250, but that's still way high to have a bank account.
Yeah.
So can these prepaid cards be used at other locations as well, or just at the dispensary? So just like a regular credit card?
Just at the dispensaries, because it's going to be tied in with the state people that are licensed by the state.
Oh, okay.
So that's something that, say, dispensaries here in Michigan use. I mean, some of the bigger operations, we have some really large operations, but we have a lot of smaller operations that are onesie, twosie, threesies, and they're the ones that are caught in the squeeze right now. So that could really help
Right.
them, right?
Right. They will greatly improve, because you can get paid faster on stuff. Now, my deal is 90 days of doing a prepaid card, we want to be able to flip that to provide credit card service. So then that pay card becomes a credit card also. So after 90 days of operation, we've got, it takes an acquiring bank lender to make it work. And that means that knocks out about 95% of the banks. There's not that many banks that are big enough, that's smart enough to know what they're doing in the credit card world. But anyway, it's there. It's getting closer. So good things are happening on that part.
So Jason's asking, would it would essentially act as a secured credit card?
As a prepaid card, basically.
Okay.
A debit card or a pay card.
So just so I'm clear, you would take your cash, insert it into the ATM, it would spit out the card, and you would use the card then to buy the merchandise at the
Right.
dispensary.
Right.
Okay.
Because what happens is, most of these places, whenever you see, a lot of times people go up and they pay with a credit card at the counter. People think, well, that dispensary will take credit cards. Actually, it's a 2-function deal. It's a cashless ATM. And so it's actually showing on your credit card, on your bank account, as that you took the money out, as just like if you did it at 7-Eleven. So it's a cashless ATM machine. So you think you only have one transaction, but it's actually 2, because you're taking it out and then you're paying the customer, the merchant.
What is a ballpark figure? What does something like that cost to set up, and how quickly can you set it up?
It's going to probably less than $100, the whole thing.
And then what's the turnaround time typically?
Instantly. It's going to be a 72-hour, what they call 72 hours, because that way, but there's no reason why you can't do it immediately on an everyday settlement.
But you need that machine. Who has that machine?
Oh, the machine just works off the regular Visa MasterCard, machine that you stick it in there. It's part of the cashless ATM system.
Huh. Because most of the dispensaries will already have that. In fact, I've never been in one that didn't have that, because before they were requiring everybody to pay in cash, right? So
right, because they've over either part of on the counter or it's in the corner. There's an ATM machine, and the ones that's on the counter up there with the merchant, they're most of the time they're a cashless ATM. it really doesn't have cash in it.
Right. So who owns the machine then?
Well, the banks do. There's actually some private owned ones. There's companies that actually have private owned ATM machines.
I mean, I've seen that. I've heard of that. I just and then how long does it take for the merchant to get reimbursed?
I actually financed a guy, uh, and he bought one and put it in his own restaurant.
Hmm.
So
Sure, he's
there's a
making
guy-
2% on it or whatever he's making on
Yeah.
it.
He
Mhm.
says, why am I letting the bank make all this money? So he had this kind of a secured area in the restaurant, and so we actually did the financing on it. It cost him about $150,000 to buy the machine and the
Yep.
security system,
Mm.
but he thought it was worth it, and
You
so
gotta
it
flip a
was.
lot of burgers for that one. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
But
Well, how long does it
people
take the
walking through the
merchant?
door,
How long before the merchant gets reimbursed then for this transaction? Right
just
away?
right away. Yeah, they settle up every day.
Now, where's it settle on a card for them?
Well, that's kind of my deal is instead it doesn't go to the bank, it goes to a merchant card that the merchant, and it will be just like if you had overpaid your credit card bill, and the next month you've got a debit on your credit card bill on the deal. And so you showed where you overpaid it. And then the merchant will have a card that has a balance on it. Instead of him owing that much money, he'll have that much money, and then he can call. He can actually place an order at Walmart and pay for it with his credit card that way.
Without having to worry about the cash, without having to worry about taking it anywhere, without any of that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a neat process.
Mm-hmm.
And what kind of fees are, because we're saying like Square is where, they have a CBD program, but they charge 4%. Are we looking at a 4% rate?
Well, I think Square's a little high. I think it's like 2.5 is what I was told. Maybe it's on the volume because that's kind of basically they were looking at starting at 3 and probably going down to 2 with some volume.
That sounds like something that a lot of the dispensaries should take a look at, right?
I think it's you'll see some of it pop up, and I don't know which state's going to be first, but it's going to be a 60 days from now. You'll see some of it, and those things kind of once it starts, you'll hear fast and be something to talk about too, because that's the guys that your people that watch you all the time are looking for something new, because they're pretty savvy on what's going on.
Well, learn something new, but something much safer too, for doing that. I remember when hearing the stories, they're talking about when Denver first came on. I remember seeing a story on TV where they talked about one of the dispensaries, there was a bank for sale. So they bought the bank because the bank had the safe in it and they didn't have to worry about transporting the money.
Well, that's probably a good move. There's people that's paid a lot of money for a security system on these things. I've actually done a lot of financing on safes and security systems. That's probably the most things I've financed that were truly cannabis owner related was security systems.
Interesting. So Joel Malinsky, thanks Joel. He has a
Here,
question.
Joel.
Joel's question is, have you heard of Rethink Pay?
I have. Yeah.
I don't know anything about it.
I've never heard of that one. Mm-mm.
I still say read.
So it's amazing that we have to come up with all these workarounds. It just
That was the
takes
word
a
I
big
was looking for
business.
too. Yeah.
It has nothing to do with providing a product or service and the satisfaction of the customer or anything. It's just how we get paid. It's like crazy.
Right. Well, this is but the people ask me what I make. I mainly do commercial financing. I do accounts receivable financing, equipment financing, and large commercial loans. And sometimes the large ones are basically from again, got two lenders that will do up to 300,000 unsecured. So, basically 25,000 up to 300 unsecured. It's pretty good. They're not cheap, but on those things, but they're unsecured and they're fast. Most of my lenders are competitive, but they're not. It's going to take 2
What
weeks. To get
what percentage are they looking at on those kind of loans?
the 2%ers, they're like credit card rates.
Right, but if I want to get an unsecured loan, let's say I want to buy some equipment, um, even maybe manufacture some equipment, but let's say I'm going to do that. What would be the interest rate that they'd be charging on that kind of stuff? Do you know? Does it fluctuate?
For example, on this is on the industrial hemp side of it. You can buy if you're going to buy a tractor,
Right.
that's more on the ag side. You're looking at 8%. Yeah, we can get it cheaper, and if things fall right, we can get it if the net worth is way high, or if they've got if depending on how they look on the paper. But this deal here, it came back at 8%, and they said, "Oh, that's fine because time is worth, how much time would you want to devote to save another 50 basis points?"
Mm-hmm.
And they said, "No, let's go with the 8, which that's fine." So we did.
And with that over 5 years or something,
Yeah, that was a 5-year.
so that'd
Five-year.
be a pretty low payment then, right?
Yeah.
Well, I know we're going to need that finance as we move forward because there's going to be a lot of equipment, a lot of infrastructure that has to be built everywhere for this whole thing. So,
Well, my question is, how many? I think there's the shortage is still processing, manufacturing, processing of hemp. I think that's really where we still have a bottleneck.
That's certainly one of the major ones because I've always said this. Okay, so now we get manufacturing industry interested in the product to use it. Okay, now I need 100,000 tons or whatever, right? Well, we're not going to be able to do that in 60 days. We got to have a year advance to make that work, to get the farmers to plant it and to be able to process it. And then, of course, it has to be processed into however they need it delivered, So, yeah, that is really we're the chicken and the egg right now. We're at that point, kind of. Yeah.
Right. And I've worked with some deals to try to do a hemp farmers co-op and for the manufacturing process, because it's like, okay, they don't grow it, but they're subject to people bringing them the hemp, and then they're working it and dividing it up and to making it useful to. And so there's a case where we'll probably wind up doing a whole bunch of different farmers co-ops.
Well, let's get into that more right after this brief commercial break to thank our sponsors.
Absolutely.
Lane, you want to hit this?
Yeah, we want to thank the Midwest iHemp Expo, going to be taking place in May 20 and 21 in Lansing, Michigan. Great time, a great networking event. Actually, on the 19th, it really starts with some classes that are going to be held. There's going to be a class there on the importance of the third-party audit, because a lot of people are going to have that as we move forward. If you're not doing it now, that's coming. This is a product that's ingested one way in the body, either with smokable product or with tinctures and everything else. And although there's not that requirement right now, there certainly is going to be as we move forward. It's just a food product, and it's going to happen. So, and it's normally consumed raw. There's really not a kill step in this stuff. So that's coming. So that's on the 19th. That'll be available. It's on the website. You can see that if you're a iHemp member. Then you can get a reduced rate for that. And right now we've got the March special going on, the March Madness special going on until next week. So you can get passes, all access passes, and you can get Expo booths at a reduced price for that. So, and then on Friday night we'll have the Hemp Award. So if anybody's making any products involved with industrial hemp, whether it be wood products or oil products or tinctures or CBD or food or whatever. You can put in for a little award there, a little fun night. We're going to have Friday night, a little dinner, a little award party. So that's a fun thing to do there. So get on the site if you're looking at coming. Right now, reduced prices for that for sure. So we want to thank some other sponsors that have helped us out with this too. Lancaster Farm podcast that they do. They're one of our sponsors for this. So we thank them quite a bit for that. So, yep. And all the information's on the website if you go to MidwestIHempExpo.com.
Yeah, or you can find it through iHempMichigan.com. Either path will work. All right, fantastic.
So, Mike, you got a little news you want to share with us?
I do. And I wanted to note that it's also for cannabis companies. It's not just for hemp companies.
Yes.
Because we're trying to get the two industries together because they've been so separate before. And so this, I'm not aware of other events. There may have been, and I just wasn't aware of it, where they're trying to bring both sides of the plant together in the same space. And could be a lot of things that each side could learn from the other, right?
Yeah, we've worked with we're working with Americans for Safe Access. That's what we're working with this year on the medical side of this. So there'll be a lot of events, like you said, Mike, there around the cannabis side as well this year. So
Yeah, it's just one plant.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid
Just
of it.
one plant. It's just that darn DEA, but we won't trash the DEA anymore. So, yeah, this week, in fact, it's happening. Michigan is distributing, the state of Michigan, $42.2 million to 163 municipalities from the excise portion of the marijuana taxes. And that's 62 cities, 15 villages, 33 townships, and 53 counties. There's still a lot. I mean, something in the neighborhood of 1,700 communities in Michigan that have opted out of cannabis. And I've always had the theory, once they start seeing all this money pouring in to all these other communities, they may rethink that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot
I
of
like
cheese.
that 40. You said 42 million.
$42 million.
How many municipalities?
Total of 163.
Yeah, I was going to say about 150, but 163.
163, yeah.
Yeah.
About. And
So,
so,
Mike, now is this a yearly or is this a quarterly?
no, this is from the 2021 total of 1.8 billion total sales. Now there's different taxing parts here. Now there's a total of a 16% tax rate on sales of cannabis products, but then there's 3 or 4 different areas in there. There's the 10% tax is the main tax, and then there's taxes that goes to cities and municipalities and sales taxes, bunch of taxes. And so the portion that then goes to the municipalities out of that lump sum is little over $42 million. But hey, $42 million, So
Yeah, it
and-
works out to like 260,000 nearly.
yeah, and
That's like a
so
fire truck. Yeah.
and so for those municipalities that are struggling with budgets, and who isn't, then this is an option. I mean, they got to kind of get past we've talked about this numerous times on the show that the past thinking about cannabis and hemp too, that
Reefer madness.
reefer madness. Yes, that's a good example that everybody's familiar with. And it's an educational process, I mean, but a lot of people are opposed to it. That's fine. But they're just missing out on all this money. So, also want to mention a couple of little interesting things. A group called Tercinta is opening Michigan's first licensed cannabis consumption lounge, and that'll be at the Hazel Park Racetrack. So it'll be an interesting day there. If you go there to bet the horses or do pari-mutuel, you'll be able to also consume. I think that's opening. I think that just opened. And then I heard an interesting story. There's another group that's coming into Ann Arbor with cannabis-friendly a hotel, so that you can go to this hotel in Ann Arbor and consume. And you can find all that information out by going to mimarijuanareport.com, and all them stories are there. And we just sent out our newsletter this morning to a few thousand folks. And so if you get our newsletter, you also get those stories in that newsletter.
Now, Mike, you've got a little party you're throwing this weekend, I hear.
Yeah, Hash Bash is this weekend. We're working closely with the Monroe Street Fair, which is the business side of it. That's where, gosh, and it's going to be a lot of vendors. The city of Ann Arbor allowed Charlie Strackbine and his partner to uh, use more streets. And so, gosh, I think there's going to be 60 or 80 booths there. And the booths will be the actual folks that are involved in the business side of cannabis, which is what we cover. And then 2 blocks away is the Hash Bash. And Bob probably is not familiar with that, but that's been going on for 51 years. And that was always the protest part. Hey, we want to smoke dope in Ann Arbor and to heck with the authorities. Well, now it's legal in Ann Arbor, has been since 2019. But and this is the first live event that they've had since 2019 because of the pandemic. And I was at the 2019 event shooting video, and the central campus where the Hash Bash will be held is called the Diag. It's where all the sidewalks come together and everything. It's a big area, but I've never seen that many people in the Diag at any given time in my life. So they're expecting 30, 40,000 people to show up for that event. And then, like I say, the Monroe Street Fair, it's a couple blocks away. And that's if you want to get more information on various cannabis businesses in the state, what's going on with them. Most of the majors will be there, and even some of the smaller players. Good friend of ours, Northern Specialty Health up in Houghton, Michigan. She's a mom and pop operation with her husband. That's Penny Milky. She's coming all the way from Houghton. That's a 500-mile drive to participate in the Monroe Street Fair because, again, it exposes customers to your products, and that's how you make sales, right? So
Just like what the expo will do. That's right. That's that networking. It's that face-to-face. That's how it works.
yeah, there's only so much you can do in the virtual world. You don't really build relationships in the virtual world. I mean, they're friends, but until you actually spend time with them face to face, that's how business is done.
Well, we got a little bit of news on the hemp side we'll talk about. MDART was talking to them the other day, and there's still a number of people that have not completed the requirements of that program. And one of those requirements is you've got to finish those last reports that they need to have. So, of course, they're not going to give you another permit if you go and you haven't done that. So if you grew last year or had a license last year, or even if you didn't, if you have a license and didn't grow, they still need you to complete that report and send that in. So please make sure that you're doing that so the program can get the figures they need to have to move forward with that. This week, of course, NOCO was last week, so we've heard a lot of good reports here and a lot of rejuvenation in the hemp community. And we're looking for the same thing here when we have that in May here to be able to rejuvenate and get a lot of great information out on that side for the hemp side. Also, some really great news that came out this week for the kind of the building community. U.S. Hemp Building Association has been working very, very hard. And this week, the ICC committee action hearing will consider the appendix for Hempcrete construction. USHBA has been working hard towards this goal for years and very intensively since October. Hundreds of man hours have gone into the work to get this to them. So this has been an intense process, and they are approaching a major event, a major milestone here.
That's good to hear, because the ICC thing, if you're going to use it as a major building product, we're going to have to get the ICC approval on that. Otherwise, and I keep telling people, in the meantime, make landscape blocks, because you don't have to qualify your PSI strength on that. But if you're going to use for a house or a commercial building, you're going to have that ICC.
So they're very excited about this. They think that they expect that they will present on April 1st or 2nd. So if you just send a little positive vibes that way to that, we sure would appreciate that. So good news there. They've been working hard on it, and good news there. They think they're going to be able to get that through. So looking forward to that. Also, we have 1 month left of the Michigan National Farmers Union. Got a grant to be able to help farmers that need to have any food safety programs written for them, handbooks, that kind of stuff. And that's free. And we're able to do that yet. We've got a month. The grant ends in April. So if anybody out there is a fruit and produce grower and you're looking to get a food safety program on your farm, we can do that. Just contact me at downonthefarm.biz. And we'll be able to do that, and it's free. Normally, that program would run anywhere between $3,000 to $5,000 to get established on a farm. So it's a pretty good deal when you can do that for free. So that's available.
Free is always good.
Free is always good. Yes. So yeah.
So any other hot questions from the audience we want to pull up?
No, Joel was. I'll talk to Joel offline. I'm going to dive more into that rethink. That looks really interesting. I looked at their website. That's it's amazing that we have all these new paths, to run your e-commerce business. So it's so Bob, what's your advice to someone that wanting to like start a co-op and buy some equipment? What do they need to do?
Well, I'll back up a little bit on people that are growers. For you to be in business long term, you're going to have contracts. It's the business of, well, I've always done this way and it's on a cash basis only. If you're going to be a real business, you're going to have to offer terms. If you can offer terms, you'll sell anywhere from double to 10 times more product if you can sell it on terms. That's where I can help you at, is selling it on terms. And that's how you grow your business. Because if you're limited to what selling it to retail stores for cash only, they can only buy what they can afford. But if you can sell it to them on terms, you can sell 10 times more of your product to them. So that's really the key to grow this industry.
Excellent. All right. And then why don't you remind people how they can get a hold of you again?
BobMooreFinancing.com.
And you're out of Oklahoma, right?
I'm in Oklahoma, but I finance stuff in every state and including Canada.
Do you find any states harder to work with than others for your financing?
Usually California. Back when it was, if you do strictly ag products, sometimes Oregon, Washington, California, usually those three, they have a deal where they don't want you to take a lien on the crop. Well, that hurts they put that in there in state law to protect the farmer, but it hurts the farmer because now he can't get money on the deal. But they did want you to be able to follow UCC1 on the actual ag crop.
Huh. Because that's pretty standard practice here in Michigan. I know that for sure.
Standard practice in most places.
A lot of different places.
On there. But what happens is it kind of depends on each underwriter, because it will, some underwriters, it will pop up and they say, no, we've got that red line. We can't do ag products on that one. But we can do ag equipment, but we can't do if it's actual. I had to deal with, because they wouldn't do a truck because it hauled product, because that's all they were going to do is haul ag products, crops. And it's like, okay, if you want to buy a different kind of truck, we'll do it. One that would qualify for a double use type deal. And so anyway, we had to back up and actually go get a different type of truck, because that, for some reason, that style of truck didn't qualify.
Wow.
Which is kind of strange. That doesn't happen very often. Those are the exceptions.
So getting back to the idea of a co-op, what could you do to help organizations, say like iHemp, set up a co-op?
Well, there's always people smarter than me that I've turned to help. But I've done a couple of these back in the did with cotton farmers. So my experience of doing co-ops was wheat co-ops and cotton co-ops. I've done those because I actually owned a wheat elevator and operated myself back whenever I was younger. And then I helped create a cotton gin co-op. So it's one of those things, you got to have people that's willing to say, we want one, and here's what I do. I make this much. What's the kind of volume that they're growing? And then you're like, okay, how much more could they grow in their operation if they had a buyer for it? let's say they're using a tenth of the property that they have. How much more product could they grow if they had a buyer, ready, willing buyer for it? And that's really what the questionnaire is. The question is how much business did you have, volume and dollar amount, and how much more could you do with the current land that you have? From
So
there,
obviously a good business plan, a good written business plan helps when you're trying to go for financing like that.
right, yeah. But again, I've done a lot of stuff with the USDA and get a lot of money out of the USDA over the years, and so that there's lots of different kind of ag things, and the farmers co-op qualifies for those, and they're buying equipment. So again, serial numbers. It's easier to do if you got serial numbers, and then we go back of who's going to buy the product after they process it. They break it down. They take in the hemp. They break it down, separate it, make a usable product. Who's going to buy that product at the end? That's where I start. I start at the last sale and work backwards to put the business plan together.
Okay.
Do you write business plans as well, Bob?
I used to write a whole bunch of them.
Mm-hmm.
I still help a lot of people do them, but I don't do them myself because I help get them started.
Okay.
Usually tell people what to do, or I edit them, but they usually wind up, people's got the closer you're to it to put the numbers in.
The easier it is, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's also talk about, for instance, if we got planting season just around the corner. Let's say somebody wants to lease farmland from somebody, owner of the land, and then use it to grow hemp. And maybe I don't think people grow much cannabis outside these days, but certainly hemp. I know from what we've looked at together that's one possibility. You can help with that, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And you can get crop insurance. Now, most people don't realize you can actually get crop insurance on hemp from the USDA. And now you can get some crop insurance from private insurance companies that's actually a little bit better than USDA. They just people kind of like seeing that USDA logo on things. It makes them feel like, they're a little safer. But
right?
yeah. But the private insurance companies actually have a better policy right now. They've added some more coverage.
Hey,
And if somebody wants to purchase land, is that possible? Can you help them with that, or is it not possible?
Yeah, I help people purchase land, do the financing for especially if they're already in business and they're farming and they want to buy another quarter of land or another 88. We do that. Help them do that. So I help them do the business plan so they can get qualified.
Mike, we have a question that came in off of Facebook about the distribution for the state of Michigan. He's saying they held on to $279 million in taxes. Does that sound right?
Not sure.
I think this is the actual part that goes to the municipalities. It's broke down by a whole bunch of different categories.
Right. Some of it is sales tax, so the state would keep that. Some of it's excise tax. I mean, there's 3 or 4 levels of taxes in there, but the part that actually went to the municipalities, and this came from the Marijuana Regulatory Agency. I mean, this is one of their press releases they sent out late last week. So coming straight from them, they said 42.2 million. So yeah, but the state handles a lot of that goes to the general fund of the overall taxes, not the 42.
$1.8 billion. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, 16%. Do the math. So a lot of that money went to the state general fund and different things like that. They skim that off there, but then in each case where the municipalities opt in, they get a piece of the action. It's just not as big as the state, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But still, $42 million is a nice paycheck for the small towns.
Yeah, 40 million. I mean, come on, so.
Yeah, that's good. All right. Anything else, Bob, before we get to the recipe? We have a recipe queued up for today.
Oh, very good. If people want to email me or email you with questions, a lot of times you get questions afterwards. So forward those to Mike or Dave or me direct, and we'll try to help you.
Sounds great. I appreciate your time. Let's get hungry. It's about lunchtime.
It is.
Well,
Lunchtime for us.
financing
And
is
you
not
know,
a real
I wasn't sure it was
popular
going to happen today, but I brought my traveling hat with me, so I even have my hat today. So
You're
Yeah,
gonna
very
like
good.
this, Bob. This is a Blaine staple. So
So today we got a really good recipe, especially if you like sweet potatoes, which I do, and they're better for you than white potatoes anyways. Roasted sweet potatoes with apricots and curried hemp seed.
ooh,
Yeah, doesn't that sound yummy? Absolutely it does. This dish is good. I can hardly see it. This is good for any occasion, and ingredients are
Here,
healthy.
I'll bring it over here.
That'll help me. Thank you very much. Dave has all this great technology here that I don't have at home.
I
so.
have 48 inches of screens in front of us.
So, yeah. With the curried hemp seed makes for a yummy side dish. The ingredients are 3 to 4 sweet potatoes cut into large chunks, 6 to 8 dried apricots cut in half, hemp seed oil. If you don't know where to get that, get a hold of me. I know where you can get that good hemp seed oil. 4 to 6 teaspoons grated with the zest of 2 lemons, a sprinkle of sea salt, a teaspoon of curry powder, a half a cup of shelled hemp seeds, and I'd go a little heavier on that just because I like hemp seeds. And 2 to 3 strings.
Hold on, Blaine. When I didn't realize when I drug that over, I stopped sharing that screen. All these technical challenges. So
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think you can see the recipe now, can't you?
yep.
Okay, see,
There you
good thing
go.
we have the wizard here because I'd be totally lost, totally for sure. So a great recipe, and this was by the Hemp Cookbook, I believe we got this out of.
Hemp
Hemp
nut.
Nut Cookbook, yep.
Hemp Nut.
And so a great yummy dish. Doesn't take too long to make, which is one of my favorite things. I like things that are easy and quick, and this is one of those. So give it a try sometime. We've got lots of recipes here on the website, on the iHemp Michigan website. So.
Yep. Yeah, and if you have any recipes to submit, here's a way to send it over to us
Yep.
or to get the
Very
latest
good.
recipe.
I gotta believe we got 1 or 2 people that like to cook out there, so send in the recipes. Let's share what you do.
All right.
All right.
Yeah, we look forward to seeing everybody at the Midwest iHemp Expo.
And hopefully we can get Bob there. All right. Think about that, Bob.
Yeah, come on out and play with us, Bob.
Yeah.
Yeah, come on, do that.
Now,
I was going to make a mention too on your in your background there, Mike. You got THC123. Anthony's going to be one of our speakers at the event.
Is he now? Yeah, he's
Yep.
a good lad. I like Anthony. He's
Yep, he's
been
coming
very
to-
helpful
he's
for us. So,
Coming to share his knowledge with everybody on that. So yeah,
yep.
very good.
And we can have we could have Bob do a little session on hemp financing, perhaps, or something.
there we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
Well,
I want to thank
financing.
everybody for joining us today, and Bob taking time out of your schedule to share some of your knowledge on it. And Mike, you're always there with the news and always good with that filling in. So we love that. So
I think Bob is trying to wrap up there. Go ahead, Bob.
was it good?
Finance is not a real popular thing to talk about. It's not, but it's a necessary
Evil.
to grow your business. You got to have some financing.
It is.
More exciting than insurance.
Can you imagine
the
the
same
potential
paragraph.
of insurance agents? Oh my God. So,
All right. Well, thanks, guys. Appreciate
All right.
it.
Thanks, everybody. See you all next
thanks.
week.
Next week.
See you next week. Thanks, Bob.